expert here tonight to talk about it, Mr. Nathan Ward. He is they have to help him, so he's a certified earned value management professional and a project controls officer. Undergraduate from University of Dayton Engineering, correct, and MBA from Carnegie Mellon.
Yes, sir.
So with that, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight. My name, once again, Nathan Ward. So, Justin mentioned my background as an engineer, and I went to Pitt for engineering and Carnegie Mellon for business. I'm a certified chief project controls officer and then also a earned value management professional. And my employment history is working for manufacturing companies and also civil engineering companies or civil construction companies. And mostly small to mid-sized companies. And so a lot of the tools that I developed were, just using Microsoft Excel or whatever software we had available. So where did value management came from? So once again, new approach. Actually started in the early 1900s by husband and wife couple, Frank and Lillian Gilbreth, who were industrial engineers, and they were particularly interested in saving motion, the study of motion. How do we, very much the predecessor to lean manufacturing and some of the other concepts we have that are designed to reduce waste in motion. And they had 12 kids, and they often put their kids to work, and one of their daughters wrote a book about it. It's called Cheaper by the Dozen. They actually made a movie about it in the 1950s. That's actually closer to their family story than the remake from a few years ago. Good book, good movie. Theirs was called Earned Time. And in the 1950s, the U.S. Navy adopted it, and they developed this technique. Some of you may have heard of this PERT. It's basically a nodal diagram for scheduling and finding the critical path. Okay, so PERT was the standard for the U.S. Navy and their contracts in the 1950s, and then in the 1967, they changed the name of it a little bit. They called it Cost Schedule Control Systems Criteria. Try saying that 5 times fast. But of course, like all government programs, they had a clever acronym called C/SCSC. So you remember that if you're ever on Jeopardy. That's what it was called. They established 35 criteria for successfully managing projects. In the early 1980s, Dave Bernstein, he's a civil engineer, he's working at Parsons. He took this concept and thought he could refine it a little bit better, and he published an article in Public Works magazine called Earned Value Management, and that's pretty much been the standard since then. The Department of Defense adopted it in the early 1980s. It was simplified to 32 criteria, and an ANSI standard was developed. It was ANSI 748A. Nowadays, it's called EIA 748C. It was actually handed off from ANSI to a different government body. But if you're working for the Department of Defense, General Services, that sort of thing, on many jobs, especially once you start talking about billion-dollar job, you have to have an earned value management program in place based on the criteria in EIA 748C. Project, and by the way, if you want to read it, feel free to read it. It's pretty interesting, but at the same time, it's not an easy read. You can contrast that with the PMI standard, which is the practice standard for earned value management. I know some of you have your PMPs or working on your PMPs, so the Bible for the project management institutes, the PMBOK, the project management body of knowledge. This is meant to be used in conjunction with the PMBOK, and I call it EVM Lite. Okay, so we're going to talk about value. What is this? Earned value. Okay, so value is something that is of usefulness. Okay, so if we're going to talk about a project, what's value? To the owner, having the project done on time is very valuable. And the best example that I've heard is a parking garage project. Okay, you can't make any money on a parking garage project until cars are parked in there and they're paying to park. But that doesn't mean you're not paying for the land. That doesn't mean you're not paying for the taxes. So if you're building a parking garage, you want to have your parking garage open and operating and collecting revenue as soon as possible. So to the owner, it's most valuable to have the project completed as quickly as possible, or at least according to the schedule. Now, if you're a contractor in the job, you want to make money on the job. And construction industry is very competitive, very low margin, so you're trying to do it at the lowest possible cost. So if you're the contractor on the job, it's valuable to you to make money on the job. So what are some elements of a successful project? We have to on time and within budget. Okay, so that satisfies, if you can do that, you're going to satisfy all the stakeholders on the project. Earned value is the value earned. Seems pretty, almost too simple, but that's really what it is. It's basically, what can I bill for that I'll get paid for? That's it. So earned value has two really key metrics that contribute to the earned value metric. That's the time and budget, okay? It's basically going to take a three-dimensional problem and boil it down to a two-dimensional graphical representation, okay? And the best analogy that there is for this is air traffic control, okay? If you're an air traffic controller, you want to know how far the plane is from the airport, but you also want to know at what altitude the plane is flying. If you just have one of those pieces of information, you're not going to really know where that airplane is at. Okay, so when it comes to projects, you really need to have a two-dimensional graphical representation of what really is a three-dimensional problem. Okay? So we're going to take a three-dimensional problem, we're going to drill it down into a two-dimensional graph, and I'm going to show that to you in a second here. Earned value can be contrasted with the other old school methods. I call them old school methods. We made money on this project, therefore it was successful, and we got the project done on time, therefore it was successful. So, within earned value, there's three days. Okay, time. Okay, you have today, you have when you expect to finish the project, and then you have when you're actually going to finish the project. So we'll get into that in a little bit here. And then you have the budget at completion. Okay, budget at completion is basically what you budgeted for the project. Okay, it's 100% of the budget, or it's the budget at time T, which is the planned end date. For the purposes of earned value, budget at completion is synonymous with earnings at completion. Okay, so this is something that isn't always necessarily clear to folks that work on the project. Wait, I've got three curves here. Where's my overhead profit come in? That sort of thing. You know, because you're tracking costs and you're tracking billings, and there's always going to be a gap between those two things. So to keep it normalized, I use percentages. Percent of budget, percent of billings. That way everything is copacetic. Okay. Planned value is the percent that you expect, percent that you are anticipating completing relative to the budget. Okay, how much do I plan to spend, and when do I plan to spend it throughout the course of this project? The earned value is what you've actually completed. Once again, what you're able to bill for and get paid for, and then your actual costs. Actual costs incurred is pretty straightforward. Little disclaimer here. Depending on between EIA 748C, the PMI standard, you can probably go online, there's different websites. Not everybody uses the same terms for all these concepts. For the most part, the PV, EV, and AC are consistent. But I don't want you to be confused about nomenclature, because once again, there's standards, but they're conflicting and not everyone follows them. So. Okay, this is the S-curve. This is the graphical representation of earned value. And this is, when people think of earned value, this is what they picture. If you've read about earned value, this is usually what you remember seeing. There's three curves. There's the planned value. Once again, this is when I expect to spend costs on the job, at what point in the job. There's the actual cost, that's what I've spent. And then there's the earned value. That's what I've built for. So we know there's a cost component. Okay, obviously because you're tracking costs. Okay, what's the schedule? It's what you can get paid for. Right. So you know you're either ahead of schedule or behind schedule, because if you build something and you can't get paid for it, then you're behind schedule. If you can't get paid for it, then you're on schedule. You understand that? The rest is simple. Within the curves, you can find two variances. You can find your cost variance, okay, and you can find your schedule variance. Your cost variance is simply the difference between what you've spent and what you've earned. and it's exclusive of overhead profit. Okay, so this is why, once again, I use percentages because, as we all know, in the real world, nobody works for free, and so there's two ways to do it. You can use percentages, or you can take your costs and mark them up. But to make it simple, that's your cost variance is I've spent 40% and I've only billed 30, therefore I'm over budget. Okay, that's your cost variance. Your schedule variance is what you expected to bill for that you haven't billed for yet. So I expected to bill $30,000 to date, but I've only billed $25,000 to date. Therefore, I'm behind on my schedule. Because if I was on schedule, I would have been able to bill the full 30%. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before. There's usually the AIG 702 form. Everyone has one, right? They're simple in Excel. You'd be surprised how many contractors don't use that. But the reason I like this form, if you haven't used it, is it asks you, what am I billing this month? How much do I have left to bill? Therefore, I've billed what percentage versus the total billing amount. It's a very nice form. I actually use that form, and you can adapt that form to project your billings for the entire project. Okay? So I'm going to talk about an example here. Well, hopefully we'll see how some of these concepts come together. So, in this example, a carpenter is framing a 2-story house. His price together for doing the work is $120,000. His budget for materials is $100,000. Okay, it's a very straightforward $100,000 job. Cost-wise, he's going to mark it up 20%. It's a 6-month job. Okay, we're going to start in August, and it's going to go through the end of January. The time, T, is 6 months. His anticipated billing schedule is as follows. Now, basically, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to spend 10%. I'm going to bill 10% in August, 30%. Now, this is all cumulative now. Okay, that's another important thing. Okay, it's all cumulative. Everything in earned value is cumulative. Because if you don't do it cumulatively, that's why the curves all go upward, because it's cumulative. So he has it all planned out where he's going to bill through the end of January. That's the curve that Matt had mentioned before. This is your planned value curve here. This is his billings up to the budget of completion. The budget of completion is the entire budget. At that point, he's done. You see, he's grabbing his hammer and his screwdriver and he's leaving. Okay, it's directly correlated in this case to his earnings. Okay, so this is his cost out, marked out, and that's what he's billing for. Okay, now, end of October, which is month 3, he has billed the owner $65,000, and he's incurred $45,000 in costs. So, without earned value, he thinks he's doing pretty good. Pretty good, right? Yeah, right. Sure. So we can see here, this is his actual billings. He's billed 17% to date at the end of month 1, 29% at the end of month 2, 54% at the end of month 3. He spent, 21% end of August, 32% end of September, 46% end of October. Okay, so that's your earned value curve. That's what his bill. The 17, 29, 54, that's your earned value curve. And then his cost out, that's your actual cost curve. We can tell just by looking at it here, earned value is above this planned value curve, so he's doing good there. His costs are below it, so that looks pretty good. And then we actually get into the numbers there. He's 9% above on the cost variance. Positive is good. Positive cost variance is good. That means you're making money. And he's 5% on the schedule. That's good as well. That means you're billing in advance. You're getting the work done faster than you would than you had planned to. And shown once again when it looks graphically, your schedule variance and your cost variance. So far, it looks like he's in good shape. Costs appear to be trending low. Schedule appears to be trending fast. Now, can we assume, because the current actual costs are less than the expected costs, that the project will finish under budget? And can we assume that because the earned value is, the current earned value is less than the expected earned value, that the project will finish ahead of schedule? The official answer, okay, Justin will tell you this, the official answer is there are formulas where you can use that history, that historical data, to project it out into the future. So this is in the practice guide, and they call it the estimated budget at completion and the forecasted end date. So those are the formulas there. They're pretty looks like a lot of different letters, and it's intuitive. You're basically taking the ratio. In this case, my cost over my earned value there. It's taking your schedule and it's shrinking it back. It can go the other way too. In this particular case, this guy was doing good. More often than not, when people think of earned value, they think of project's going to be in trouble. So I wanted to show that it can go either way. You can find that just as easily. The reference point, earned value over planned value, and the reference point would be, in this case, the end of October, because we have that data. So I ran the calculations here for you. Basically, he was at 46% of his costs versus 54% of his billings. So if you use the formulas, it's saying that I budgeted $100,000 for this job, but I'm only going to actually spend $85,000. That's pretty good. His schedule, he's pulled it back by 13 days. So he tells the owner that, the owner's happy as hell. He runs out and hires a moving company to move in early. Here's what it looks like when you plot it out. And once again, it looks like a good project overall here. This is your budget at completion. Somehow they got wrapped around there. This is your earnings at completion. This is your time tau. That's when this is predicting that the project's going to finish. Okay. Now this is where, Nate working in companies and saying, like, this doesn't always happen in real life. What's the alternate? Okay, the alternative approach is you actually have to go back and re-estimate the job. You have to take into consideration any new information that you've learned since you started the job, or since the last time you did an estimate. EAC is estimate at completion. It's your actual cost plus whatever you think it's going to cost to finish the job. And your value at completion is what I've billed versus what I need to bill yet on the job. Labor. In this case, he's actually running heavy on the labor. He's spending more labor hours than he expected. So even though he was doing well, a lot of the reason he was doing so well is because he was able to buy the material at a cheaper price. If you look at his labor, he's actually running over on it. He expected to spend 625 hours on the whole project, whereas he spent over 400 halfway through. So going forward, he says, pretty pragmatically, I might as well just put 400 hours in there because we're running heavy. I'm not going to be able to make that up, but luckily I was able to save enough on the material that should still be okay. So we punch that in there. We can see that his estimated completion is now $98,500. So, which is more than the estimated completion that the formula spit out, but still pretty good. We're going to plot that out here. Once again, the estimated completion just follows the cost curve. So if you follow your cost curve, your estimated completion plots out. Okay, value of completion. This is your billings. So in this case, now that he knows that he's running behind schedule, he knows that he's got to schedule this 400 man hours, he plots it out. Now he's actually finishing at the end of March. So what's supposed to be end of January, now it's the end of March. Here's what he had projected to spend. This is his planned value. Once again, 100% end of January. Now he re-estimates the job, he reschedules the job, and he finds out that he's not going to be done until the end of March. So original duration was 6 months, now it's 8 months. And here's what that looks like. So here's end of March, 100% complete on costs and billings. Now you can see, once again, the plan value hasn't changed. This red curve never changes. Okay? Red curve is your plan value that never changes, that's your baseline. The alternative approach should be used always when practical. Okay? When practical. Okay? When it makes sense. Exceptions. Okay, so this is when you can use the formulas or when it makes sense to use the formulas. You negotiate a better deal on materials. Okay, you know that cost is going to be the same throughout. You don't have to re-estimate the whole job. You can just run it out of the formulas. The opposite is true also too. If your job's costs are high, I know I was buying steel 2 to 3 years ago and it like tripled in price overnight because the new tariff came out. So if you know that it's going to be high, it's going to be high for the rest of the project at a certain percentage, you can run it out with the formulas. And the same with the schedule. You know, if you maybe bought a new piece of equipment that doubled your productivity, well then you can just run it out for the rest of the job. And errors in initial estimates. If you find out, yeah, this guy, he bid 10, but it's really 20, you can just extrapolate the formulas. So, last curves are an effective graphical representation of a project's performance. The variances can be quickly recognized and addressed. Once again, the PV curve should never, ever, ever be modified except change order. Right? That's or contract modification. Change orders or contract modifications. As if you do the change order, best practice is make sure you're asking for time in your change. Okay? Don't, a lot of times you send a change order and you don't put any time on it. Guess what? Now you own that. So always, if you're doing a change order, keep that in the back of your mind. Development plans, planning to fail. Okay, how often should you do this? As often as practical for the duration of the project. If you're talking about a 3-month project, you're going to probably want to do it every other week. Bigger projects, at least once a month. Okay? All right. These are more for you to take home. I'm not going to get into all these different formulas here, but with this, if you take away anything from this, it should be, now that I've got these 3 curves, now that I've got this data, I can tell a whole lot about this project. Okay? Whether it's, how efficiently are we using our resources? How efficiently are we using our time? So there's all kinds of formulas here that you can apply as long as you know your planned value, earned value, and your actual cost. Variances. Okay, you almost always have variances. Variances are not a bad thing necessarily, as long as you recognize them and you can respond to them. If you do encounter a variance, you want to do a root cause analysis and then perform corrective action. And some examples of corrective action, if let's say you're behind schedule, you can work overtime or add additional resources. They call that crashing the schedule. You can, let's say you've got high material costs. See if you can find another vendor, source another vendor that has lower material costs, that sort of thing. Or if maybe you have a bad subcontractor in your job, and that's why you're behind. And you can put them, put him or her on notice and seek termination for cause. One thing that our value is going to help you do those, as you're doing this root cause analysis, is determine if there's scope creep. We have a lot of instances where sometimes in the heat of the moment, in the midst of the job, you end up doing something that you didn't even realize you never even bid. Owners are famous for asking for work that they didn't bid on because why not? You're there and you did it. So therefore, lucky me, I'm lucky you. So I talked about overhead and profit, and everyone says overhead and profit, OH&P. Well, in reality, it's OH&P and C, contingency. Okay, because if something goes wrong, where's it come from? It comes out of profit. Okay, so in this case, it was 20% OH&P, but it's really OH&P and C. If you go to EIA 748C, they actually require you to have a management reserve. They actually require you to keep your contingency separate from your overhead and profit. It's probably not a bad practice. How do I come up with the money to put into that reserve? Do a thorough risk analysis. And it's important to remember that your management reserve is not it cannot be used under any circumstances unless management signs off on it. It has to be predetermined that money can be used. So if your project's upside down, you can't say, I'm just going to pull out of the reserve. Okay, it's pretty much not touching. Common risks. There you go, right there. Weather, big risk. You can try to predict, well, we have so many rainy days this summer, but, you still want to have some, that's known risk. There's known risks and unknown risks. So, you want to put some money in there for known risk and unknown risk. Labor shortages. Okay, delays. The site's not ready. Preceding trade work isn't complete. Now, some of that might be compensable, but you better be able to prove it. That's why you're being delayed. And inflation, currency value, variations if you're buying materials from overseas. Risk analysis. I'm sure some of you have seen this before. You assign the likelihood and severity, and therefore, depending on how severe and how likely it is, you're going to want to carry more money. So if you're pricing risk, it's basically the probability times the cost of the risk. If it's 10% risk on a $100,000 job, then it's $10,000. Financial risk is not to be confused with safety risk. Okay, it's two separate risk analyses. Proper way to do risk analysis is use a risk register. Okay, and that way and this is from the book of forms. You can get one. I'm sure you can get this online. You can create this yourself in Word or something. But basically, what's the risk? What's the likelihood? And who's responsible for tracking it? What is our mitigation plan? And you want to review it regularly. I think a lot of you have seen this before. I'm just going to touch on it briefly here. But basically, you break your work into the smallest work packages practical for your for tracking purposes. The first level is your project level. Second level is major components. Third level is subcomponents, and the fourth is work package. WBS dictionary. This is a requirement of the EI 748C. Basically, now I've got this work breakdown structure. I've got this work package. Your WBS defines, what it is, what the price is, what the cost is, who's responsible. So it's, best practices, and depending on if you're doing a DoD job, you're going to have it, this is required, that you break down each work package into what it is and who's responsible. And then your OBS, I don't show a picture here, but that's your organizational breakdown structure. That's your org chart for your project. Who's in charge of the project? Who's the project manager on the project. So it's not necessarily the corporation's org chart, but the project-specific org chart. A tool here that's called an EBM Atom, Accountability and Transparency Oversight Matrix. This is developed by the Earned Value Management Institute, and it takes your work breakdown structure and it assigns responsibilities in several categories. Clear responsibilities for managing the project throughout. And one little portion of this is the RQM Atom. That's your risk and quality management accountability. That's just one subset of the EBM Atom. This is one of those tools that, it's out there. If you find it useful, great. If not, no biggie. You can still have a very successful project. CPM schedule, it's a Gantt chart with part intelligence. So basically, if you run a CPM schedule, you know that if I change anything along the critical path, I'm going to push the dates out. So this is always when you're building your Earned Value Management program, you're going to want to do a CPM schedule. These are required on the DoD jobs, but they call it a contract performance report. It's a CPR, and you can get these very easily from these are government forms basically, but they're for WBS organizational categories, baseline staffing, and explanations and problem analysis. These are required on DoD jobs, but these forms are out there. If you have any interest in using them, checking them out, you can develop your own forms. If you're not on a government job, you just want to track this kind of stuff. Control accounts. So depending on the size of the project, you may want to establish control accounts for the work packages. This kind of gives you an idea of how a budget would be allocated across the course of the project here. You have your cost budget, your profit, fees, and then you break it down into distributed budget and undistributed budget. This is going to be for a large project. This is a $1 billion project here. So if you're doing something that's $1 billion, you're going to be using all these tools. So if you're doing something that's $50,000, probably not. Okay. They do make software out there that conforms to the EI 748C standard. Deltek makes Cobra and some other tools. We were talking a lot about software, Justin and I earlier. There's so many options out there for software. None of them are necessarily great when it comes to our value. You can cost load a schedule a project. I know you said P6, Michelle, is a good tool for tracking your costs on schedule. thing I'll caution you if you're using a scheduling software to cost it is don't lose your baseline. No matter what you do, don't lose your baseline. Like we say, it gets tricky when you get into change orders, but you still want to preserve that baseline. Your accounting software may have some built-in earned value management capabilities and may not have the same graphical interfaces. You want to run the graphics. In that case, see if you can export to Excel. Mostly everything these days, you can get a CSV file out of it, put it in Excel, and run the graphs. And we talked about scheduling, software, spreadsheet. I mean, honestly, for any of the projects I ever ran, Microsoft Excel is fine. The only thing I caution you about using the spreadsheet is having the discipline to do it. Because when you're using a spreadsheet, it's so, commonplace that it doesn't feel like you're using a powerful tool. But really, you're using a powerful tool. You can tell a lot just from an Excel. And as long as you're being disciplined about it, as long as you're maintaining it monthly. Common concerns and misconceptions. Different sources use different terms or acronyms for the same EVMS concepts. That's actually true. Although there are many forms, not all are necessary for an effective EVMS implementation. Absolutely. I showed you forms here that, if you can use them, use them. If not, you can still do great. EVM as a new method has not been proven. That's false. It's been around since the early 1800s. Cheaper by the dozen guy. EVMS implementation is highly expensive and a waste of valuable resources. That's false. Not useful for small projects. False. Variances are bad. False. Variances are not bad. You just have to be able to recognize them. That's all. And then EVMS does not help the successful management of the project. That's false. All right, takeaways. When done properly, earned value management is an effective tool for analyzing the health of the project. EVM can help quickly to identify variances and enable recovery. Depending on the size and scope of the project, additional tools can be used in conjunction with earned value management to more effectively control the project. And last but not least, an earned value management implementation can be done with full cost and without the need for additional software. There's my contact information if you guys want the slides. If you want, like I said, I have an Excel spreadsheet you can have. If you have questions, if you're trying to do this and you run into something, I always respond to emails. All right. Thanks.